But Lincoln also had an east-west vision. It was a continental-wide vision. Scott, in the previous talk, spoke about it a little bit. Several times it has come up in this conference. Lincoln had the ability to say that we were going to be the greatest country on the earth because he could see it. And he knew certain things had to happen to make that come about. He knew, for example, that the East Coast and the West Coast had to be knit together with a railroad using the latest technology. He was a technology geek. He was fascinated with the telegraph. You know, he fought the first telegraph war, really a large-scale war in human history. But he knew that we had to knit the country together so that there'd be the expansion of a free republic. And he knew that to support the expansion of a free republic, not only would you have a railroad to move people and goods and their services so that they could enter a larger economy. They wouldn't just be subsistence farmers on the back 40, you know, growing what they could and then just sort of sustaining themselves and their immediate neighbors. No, those railroads enable these farmers, these citizen yeoman republicans now, to enter a global marketplace to ship their goods, and then those goods end up going any number of places, and then they, through their wealth, get the goods in return. He sees this great economic empire. An empire, perhaps, that would not just acquire lands, but would acquire wealth, that would grab wealth increasingly from around the world because American farmers, American manufacturers were producing what the world needed. He had this great vision for this that he supported also, if you look at the Homestead Act, people actually to go out and populate the West. And then if you look at the Morrill Act and the great land-grant universities, and we're very blessed in this state to have Michigan State University, founded in 1855 before the Morrill Act, but they claim that they are the first land-grant university. And we honor them as such at Michigan State. So it's really a remarkable legacy that Lincoln gives us, not just in terms of North and South and preserving the Union. And of course, in the hierarchy of things, we would all emphasize that. But also East and West, that he saw that we would become a global economic superpower. And that is a very key sense in which he was the founder of a modern political party. He understood that this country would continue to grow if we did not step on our own progress in our march west and in solving our problems with labor and slavery. He had that great vision. What would be something else that Lincoln had that we would notice? Okay, we've talked a little bit so far about the fact that he was a people person. He connected with us. He came into a room and he connected with us. He told us stories. He made us laugh. We've talked a little bit about his passion, that as a young man we would identify as perhaps reckless ambition, but as he got older and older we would admire for his ability to turn that ambition into something that was service to others. Leadership as service. So what am I saying? Leadership is relationship in point 1. Leadership is service in point 2. Imagination, this capacity to see where this country was going to go, and realizing that for whatever reason, whatever mysterious reason, he was in a position to help this country achieve a larger vision, east-west as well as north-south. He was in the crossroads to do something great. He had the imagination to grasp it and to act on it. But none of this would count if he didn't have something else. And that was his character. Abraham Lincoln knew he possessed a strong character. And when you know his biography, you certainly see why. Let's talk a little bit about his origins. Abraham Lincoln comes from as I say, a cabin. Some people, it's controversial. Some historians say that he was even poor. His family was poor by the standards of the Kentucky and Indiana frontier. Other historians point out that his father, Thomas Hanks, at one time had 2 horses, had title to 2 pieces of property. Now he lost them. But the point is, this was a very insecure existence. And you went in and out of relative prosperity. I mean, prosperity on this frontier, when you actually go and look at these cabins, it's not in any sense that we would call prosperity. Lincoln had to overcome tremendous material poverty to get where he got in life. He overcame, of course, being isolated, not having access to books, going to an ABC school for exactly 1 year of his life. He had 1 year of formal schooling. I always make the distinction between education and schooling. Lincoln was poorly schooled but well educated. I always correct students when they say that he only had 1 year of education. No, he had about 56 years of education, 1 year of schooling. Abraham Lincoln's schooling, as you know, taught him reading, writing, and ciphering to the rule of 3. So what was this incredible mind doing? He was drawn not to the farming life. Why, he didn't even like the hunting on the frontier. Just let me have a little digression here. When he was 7 years old, he was alone in the cabin, and there were some turkeys out, and you know, he was testing. All boys, like all girls, test themselves. How do I become a man? How do I measure up to my dad? My dad's so critical of me. And so he shot the turkey, and he felt so bad about it. From the age of 7 on, he claims he never again shot anything larger than a rabbit, as it made him feel so bad. This is a kid who did not fit into the frontier, in other words. This is why he wanted to get off that farm and go to the store. He wanted to be a surveyor. He wanted to be postmaster. He wanted to take that barge down the Mississippi River. Whatever it took, he wanted to get off the farm. Of course, he eventually, as you know, becomes a lawyer and a politician and then a statesman. But the point is that Lincoln had the character to know, okay, I'm different. I'm a different kid. You know, he was the kind of kid who would go to church on Sunday when they could get to church. His parents were very religious. He'd come back and he would weave his legs into the fence rails that he'd helped his pa make. And he would repeat the sermon of what happened at church. And he would do it better. And the kids would laugh. Here was a kid who knew he had special gifts. But he also had to overcome so many things that would have beat down people who weren't as strong. When you think about the fact that he had a little brother die shortly after childbirth. Then his mother dies of the milk sick. Contaminated milk because the cow had eaten a noxious weed. Now think about this. Let me paint a little vivid picture for you. Knob Creek, Indiana. That cabin has been measured at 16 by 20 feet. You imagine your mom in there dying for a week. A writhing, terrible death. Very painful death. And you're just all sitting in there, trying to nurse if you can, doing your chores, but you can never get the image of her pain, her swelling body, the sweat. I think it was in October 16th. The sweat, the tongue gets swollen and black. Physicians have described what the milk sick does to people. And it's not pretty. And here you have this 9-year-old kid watching this. And she is delirious a lot of the time. And then she dies, and you have to help build your mom's coffin with your dad. You're the boy. So you take the lathe, you're doing the planing, you're doing the whittling. It's been speculated, you know, what did Abraham look like as a 9-year-old kid as he's whittling the mortise and tendons for putting that coffin together? What must have been going through his head as he was thinking about the human condition? Why his very mother, the person who had brought him into this world, was no more. And he was left with a father who was very critical. A father who criticized him for not going out. Why aren't you like the other boys? Why don't you hunt more? The deer out there, why didn't you shoot it? Why don't you help me more in farming? Why are you always going off and reading? We got more chores to do. I'm going to beat you if I catch you reading again. That's Abraham Lincoln's childhood.